You think you've seen heartbreak before? You think you've watched a family fall apart on reality TV or witnessed the kind of betrayal that shatters not just vows, but entire legacies? Think again, because what unraveled inside that courtroom wasn't just a divorce. It was the collapse of an empire, a faith-built fortress shattered brick by the very man who once stood at its center, Bible in hand, promise on his lips, and deception in his heart. It started like a whisper, rumors, flickers, shadows. But by the time Tamila Mann stepped through the courthouse doors, no glam squad, no entourage, just pain stitched into her spine like armor. The silence that fell was deafening, the air electric. Reporters didn't breathe. The cameras didn't blink. It was as if the whole world knew that gospel royalty was about to burn down the very altar she helped build, and she wasn't asking permission. She was declaring war. David Mann, once the beloved face of black love, sat frozen at the defendant's table, not the family man the public thought they knew, but the architect of a betrayal so brutal it would ignite a cultural reckoning. And beside him, like a ghost dressed in designer guilt, sat Dr. Jackie, the woman America once turned to for healing advice, now exposed as the snake who slithered into another woman's marriage, masked in therapy credentials, devouring trust behind a clipboard and a fake smile. The judge's gavel fell like a guillotine. Divorce finalized, assets split, full custody awarded to Tamila, and then the world held its breath. But Tama didn't walk out. No, she stood. She walked to the podium, eyes glistening not with tears, but with fire, and delivered a statement so raw, so devastating, it didn't just trend, it seared itself into digital history. "You didn't just take my husband," she began, voice trembling but unshakable. "You tried to take me with him, but I'm still standing. And you two? You're done." The courtroom gasped. Social media exploded. Calls to justice for Tamila trended globally. David the Deceiver and Jackie Exposed shot to #1 on Twitter. But it wasn't the hashtags that made history. It was the moment Tamila pulled out an old wedding photo, held it high for all to see. 2 kids, young and in love, before the fame, before the lies, and said, "This was us, before you sold your soul to comfort and convenience. You can keep this. That man's dead." She dropped the photo like a gavel of her own. The courtroom's collective heartbeat stopped. David's face turned paper white. "Doctor." Jackie looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole, but it wasn't over. Because what the cameras didn't catch, what the headlines only hinted at, was the hell Tamila had survived for 2 years. Therapy sessions that turned into secret meetups, counseling that morphed into private lunches, and then into hotel rooms. What was meant to heal their marriage became a breeding ground for betrayal, and Tamila, in an act of resilience no one saw coming, stayed silent. You'd think it ended in that courtroom, wouldn't you? That the story was complete when Tamila Mann walked out with her head high and the crowd roaring like she'd just slayed a dragon, dressed in gospel linen and therapy credentials. But baby, that courtroom door didn't slam shut on a scandal. It cracked open the gates of a reckoning so seismic, so brutal, so loud, it echoed through the entire faith-based entertainment world like a trumpet from Revelations. Because what followed wasn't peace, it wasn't privacy, it wasn't healing, it was war. The kind of war where receipts become weapons, silence becomes guilt, and every prayer you ever whispered for a man you loved turns into a scream demanding justice. Just hours after the gavel dropped and David Mann's accounts were frozen, Tamila's legal team filed the next shot, a formal criminal complaint citing wire fraud, identity theft, and misappropriation of religious donations. But it didn't stop there. Oh no. Because as news broke about the forged documents and the stolen $300,000 channeled through the Mann family trust, federal eyes turned their gaze toward what had long been a protected empire of tax-sheltered gospel tours, church donations, and counseling sessions held behind closed hotel suite doors. And it didn't take long for someone inside to flip. A whistleblower, a former tour manager. A woman named Leandra, silent for years, came forward with a signed affidavit and screenshots of David texting Jackie from church pulpits, from charity galas, from hotel lobbies, while Tamila sang 3 feet away. "Baby," one read, "I see you even in a crowd." Another, "She thinks we're in prayer, but I'm only ever with God when I'm inside you." That text hit the internet like a grenade wrapped in gospel shame. Screenshots flew across Twitter like digital ashes from a burning altar, and then came the bombshell. A second whistleblower, a financial advisor who once worked on their ministry budget, confirmed that you thought it ended with the documentary. With Tamila Mann walking away crowned in the fire, her voice echoing through a movement of liberation and gospel truth, her book climbing bestseller lists like it was climbing out of hell? No, darling, that wasn't the end. That was just the intermission. Because what came next wasn't healing in silence, it was the storm after the resurrection. It was David Mann, shackled not just by guilt but by the federal government, facing a grand jury with charges stacked higher than his ego ever reached. Wire fraud, identity theft, embezzlement of religious funds, misuse of non-profit status, financial abuse within a marital trust, and behind every bullet point on that indictment was a paper trail dipped in lies and signed with Tamila's stolen name. The courtroom changed this time, no longer a place of divorce but a stage of reckoning. The pews were packed with former church members, faith leaders, former tour staff, every one of them subpoenaed or voluntarily lining up to say, "He wasn't who we thought he was." Even the bailiff looked stunned. And Tamila, she didn't need to testify again. She had already done that, on camera, on stage, in song, in fire. This time, she sat silently in the front row, unshaken, wrapped in grace, surrounded by survivors wearing her tour merch like armor. "My name belongs to me." But even still, the prosecution didn't need her words. They had evidence, photos, texts, financial statements that showed how David funneled ministry donations into spa weekends with Dr. Jackie, who by this point was a walking shadow of her former self, her license stripped, her clinic boarded shut, her Instagram deleted, and her face plastered on tabloids under headlines like "Therapist of Temptation" and "The Counselor Who Needed Counseling." And then came the audio, leaked from the grand jury room, played live on every major network. A voicemail David left Jackie during their affair. "She's not even a woman anymore, Jackie. She's just a vessel. I only feel like a man when I'm with you." That voicemail broke the last thread of public sympathy. Pastors who had once defended him fell silent. Former collaborators erased him from album credits. Gospel radio hosts who used to call him the Standard now called him the Warning. And then came the biggest rupture of all, the premiere of Crowned in the Fire, red carpet, Netflix, every major outlet. But Tamila didn't arrive in a limo. She arrived on foot, flanked by her daughters, her mother, and a line of survivors, women who had walked away from abusive marriages, spiritual manipulation, pastoral gaslighting, all of them now radiant in black gowns, head held high. The documentary itself? A masterclass in truth-telling. It opened with the wedding footage. Tamila and David, young, hopeful, promising forever. Then, boom, footage of the trial, the audio leaks, her live stream, Jackie's clinic being shut down, testimonies from tour staff, counselors, pastors. Even Jackie's former assistant, who admitted under oath that Jackie cried after her first night with David and said, "I think I just ruined my career." But the most powerful part wasn't the evidence. It was Tamila's confession on camera. "For years, I thought being silent was noble, but silence didn't save me. Truth did." Those 6 words detonated across the internet. Silence didn't save me. Truth did. It became a sermon, a tattoo, a movement. Churches began hosting Crowned in the Fire screenings. Support groups formed. One megachurch in Texas even scrapped their marriage retreat curriculum and replaced it with Tamila's book. And yet, while the world uplifted her, David descended. At the federal trial, his attorney begged for leniency, citing emotional distress and career loss. But the prosecutor shut it down with one phrase. "Your client's career didn't collapse. His mask did." In a final, desperate plea, David asked to speak. The courtroom tensed. Tamila didn't look at him. "I still love her," he began. "She was my everything. I just didn't know how to be enough." But the judge, unmoved, said, "You didn't fail at love. You weaponized it." And the gavel came down. Guilty. 5 counts. Sentencing to be announced. But the damage was done. David's empire had crumbled. His bookings vanished. His name removed from the Gospel Music Hall of Fame. His albums pulled from distribution. And Jackie? In a final, unexpected twist, she emerged. Not on a talk show, not with a press statement, but in a leaked video, shaky and disoriented, walking barefoot outside a rehab center in Arizona. Rumors swirled. Pills, breakdowns, spiritual delusions. But Tamila never addressed it. She didn't need to. Because her power didn't come from dragging people through the mud. It came from rising above it. And rise she did. The same week David was convicted, Tamila announced a new nonprofit, Reclaim Her Name, a national foundation providing legal aid, housing, therapy,